There's certainly been a lot written and a lot said about this dreadful Ukraine conflict with the Russians attacking Ukraine. But an eye-catching opening to one of the Ukraine accounts certainly caught my eye. And this is what it said. People in Ukraine are not bothering much about COVID anymore, and that extends to their neighbours in places like Poland. There are far more important issues to worry about, and they can no longer hide in their houses worrying about something like a cold. Got to remember that the 2019-2022 pandemic is as significant historically as probably the Spanish flu of 1918, not because of numbers that are killed, but because for the first time in history we attempted to stop the spread of a respiratory illness by isolating whole populations from each other. It already looks like an overreaction, and certainly it is shaping up to looking like a huge mistake. Longer-term history may judge it still less favourably when it can see the damage done to the lives of those who were locked up. We don't know yet how well history will remember the 2022 Ukraine-Russian War. The First Balkan War of 1912-1913 killed over 400,000, but it remembered only by specialists now. But if there is a moment when history judges the COVID pandemic to have it ended, it will be this. When Putin not only threatened the Ukraine but the world with nuclear conflict, worrying about an illness with a relatively low case fatality, well, it looked like self-indulgence. When tower blocks are being shelled and defenceless civilians bombed as a face mask looks like a rather flimsy defence against the dangers of this true modern world. If they are defeated, even if they are defeated, the stand they have made will be like the Warsaw Uprising in 1944. It was defeated and led to the destruction of the city, but in the decades following, the Poles submitted least of all Eastern Europeans to the Soviets, and the example of their heroism in 1944 sustained them, and they eventually gained their freedom in 1989. So too with Ukraine. We don't yet know if Zelensky's bravery will prevail. It deserves to. We must hope that it will. But such heroism is not in vain, no matter what happens. It is an example that will inspire Ukrainians not yet born. That example certainly matters. The West, too, has performed much better than expected. Putin thought there would be limited sanctions, but his fury demonstrates his miscalculation. We are supplying the Ukrainians with weaponry and providing other services. Those Ukrainians who flee, they will certainly be looked after. One thing is for sure. Zelensky's resolve to fight his beloved Ukraine alongside his countrymen is proof, in my mind at any rate, he is one of the few modern-day leaders showing truth and resolve. Most other leaders in that situation would have flown out of the conflicted country in a private aircraft crammed with money, and of course using governing in exile as an excuse. Russia, although formerly ruled by communism, is behaving like a communist country. They in the past few days invaded Ukraine, bombing civilian structures and killing hundreds of innocent people. Of course, this is no surprise to anyone. This is what communist regimes do. There are now going to be long-term consequences until and unless the Russian people decide to rejoin the civilized world.